Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Drew, and I want to welcome you back to Learn How to See Better. It's the only podcast out there that will improve your vision the longer you listen. And today, what I want to talk about is something I've been thinking about, and it's been on my mind a little bit. So I want to dive a little bit deeper on it. And it's a topic or kind of a concept that I want to share. I'm just thinking out loud, but I've been thinking about this idea or concept of locks and keys to freedom. Okay? Locks and keys to freedom. Now, think about this for a second. It's not so much about the type of freedom. I could go into a long discussion about the different types of freedoms, right? Freedom, with parenting, or freedom, just walking down the street in your everyday life, right? But today we're going to talk about locks and keys to freedom, and in the perspective of what sorts of locks and keys to freedom do you have when it comes to your thinking, your ability to exist as a human being, right? And part of being a human is going through the experience that our minds, our bodies, our spirits have as this, unique concoction, trifecta, that we can really just, create a universe of our dreams or of our nightmares, if you think about it, right? So, I don't want to get too deep on you guys too fast, but I was thinking about this when I went on a walk. I went on a walk to the park with my family not too long ago. It was over the weekend. Beautiful weather here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's sunshine. It's spring 2020. We want some fresh air. We don't want to be cooped up inside. It's always good to get the blood flowing. So we go for a short walk as a family, right? And so it's my wife and I, little babies in the stroller, kids on their bikes, right? And we take a walk. We're less than a mile from the park. So we said, let's take a walk to the park, lap around the park. We'll have a great time, getting the heart rate out, getting some sunshine before it gets too hot here, right? It gets pretty hot in Phoenix, Arizona, but we take this walk to the park. And I was thinking about how, we've had this nice little kind of ritual tradition. We walk away from our house. We walk through the neighborhood, we cross the street, we get to the park, and the park's pretty good size. So it's probably, close to a mile if we walk a lap around the park. And as I've talked about in the past, I've actually, got this thing for doing pull-ups, right? As part of my fitness routine. Ever since I've been young, I've been pretty good at doing pull-ups. So we walk around the park and we get to the spot where the pull-up bars are. But, this is April 2020, and when we took this walk to the park was a little bit different than some of our other walks to the park. So depending on how much you pay attention to current events, right, there's been some changes in how you access certain things at the park, right? So the park's partially closed off, meaning there is yellow caution tape, do not enter tape wrapped around all of the things that you would use, right? The basketball hoops are wrapped up with bags. You can't shoot hoops. Volleyball nets taken down. Playground area is wrapped off, so you can't go in to use the park, but the space is still there, right? The sidewalks aren't blocked off, so it's still open air, open space. Anyway, without getting into any of that, I get to the pull-up bar and it's wrapped off in yellow tape, and I'm like, my pull-up bar, right? It's like waking up on Christmas morning. If there was no gifts under the tree with your name on them, you'd be kind of shocked, like you're not used to handling this. So you chuckle about it, if you make that type of example. But in this real life example, it's like, man, I'm at the park with my kids, and we can't really use anything at the park, right? So whole separate discussion there, but just going through experiences and changes. Because when you have certain experiences that are routine for you, if they're suddenly totally different, your mind's like, wait a minute, what's this? So you wake up for Christmas morning, no gifts under the tree at all. That's going to be one to be like, oh, what's this? So in this case, wait a minute, I can't take a walk around the park and do a set of pull-ups. I'm just going to keep it moving, right? But so essentially, it's like, all right, my mind, I'm having a hard time processing, just this little small piece of it. It's like, man, I couldn't stop and do a set of pull-ups, quick 20, and, I'm literally out of there in 30 seconds and on about the day. But right now, that's not okay. It's against the rules, okay? And so we made the decision to keep on walking by, right? Not out to rock the boat. We're just having a nice day, walking around the park with the kids. But as my mind went through this process of assessing, like, hey, wait a minute, I've lost this, this freedom, right? There's this thought, right? The park's free to go to at any time. Ought to be able to just do a set of pull-ups, right? Something so simple, so basic. But the world's kind of changed a little bit in the last 30, 60, 90 days, right? So again, keeping this focus on the topic at hand, the lock and the key to freedom was I felt immediately restricted because this luxury in my life was taken away. So simple as 2 metal bars vertically, 1 bar horizontally. It's just a metal bar, do some pull-ups on it. It's blocked off, okay? Can't use it, period. So then I started thinking, it's like, I stopped for a second because my mind was trying to process all this and thought, wow, a month ago, there was no big deal. A month later, big deal. And, what harm would have actually taken place if I'd have just stopped and done that same 30 seconds and left. So I didn't dwell on that too much, but it brought me back to one of the best books I've ever read. And if you've never read this book, you've got to go out and get it. If you've ever had the desire to become a highly effective person, however you define that to you, then I'd strongly recommend you go out and read this book. And why do I say that? The name of the book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen R. Covey. It's not a brand new book, but it is a great book. You can look it up, find it on Amazon, paperback, hardback, audiobook, no no limit to ways you can find it, right? Go to a library, go to a bookstore, but get your hands on this and get exposed to some of the concepts. And I'm not going to spoil the whole book, but somewhere in it, can't tell you the beginning, middle, or end, there's a story told about a gentleman who is an author of another book. I'll get into that later, but let's stay focused. The story Dr. Covey tells in this book is about a man who is a prisoner. He's a prisoner in this horrific time in history. This is like a real story. This man's a prisoner, and all his freedoms are taken away. And what he went through was this experience where he learned what true freedom meant, and that it really existed in the mind. That his freedom actually existed in his mind. And, you can put all the bars around someone or shackle them up or take, everything away from them, right? But your basic freedom of your mind, if you will allow it, like he found the key to true freedom. So granted, he might have been out in the blistering cold, dragging heavy objects or just doing whatever you have to get subjected to and, these horrific, tests and experiments. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, he found the key to freedom. And that was in his mind. He knew that no matter what physical things, he would be exposed to, that he had that choice, that power of self, that internal power to know that if he would allow himself to be free in his mind and be able to kind of separate the two to some degree from an experiential standpoint, it becomes oh so powerful in the number of ways that he can just literally change his experience. And, so the story went on to say that, once he found this key to freedom, he essentially had more freedom than his captors, right? The captors are just, following orders from up top, like, keep this guy, trapped and locked down. He's, whatever he's going through, right? You'll have to read the book, or you could go and get the book from the author, whose name was Viktor Frankl. And the name of that book is Man's Search for Meaning. We just picked it up, actually. I've been meaning to add that to my collection. Another, classic book to add to the repertoire. So go visit those. If you ever want to think about and look at from a different perspective, if your life's been changed at all in the last 30 days, right? This would be a very powerful set of examples of the extremity that one individual went through that would probably, make anything that we're all going through current day, it'd pale in comparison to his trials and tribulations. But his triumphs that came from finding that key to freedom, the freedom of his mind, that's what enabled him to essentially rise above the details of his situation that others would seem to indicate was so dismal. So I want to apply that lesson here because it's one of those nuggets I picked up along the way and say, well, what does this have to do with you walking in the park, and trying to do some pull-ups. Are you rocking the boat, or you just keep it moving? Because, rules are rules. You shouldn't break them. It's blocked off, right? That's just the state of things right now. But it made me chuckle after I thought of that story, because as we, paused to catch up with the kids who had rode ahead on their bikes and made them wait ahead at our little meet spot, I stopped and I thought for a second, wow. And I closed my eyes, and I opened my mind to that scene just a few moments ago. And what I did in my mind, with no rebellious bone in my body, take it for surface value, I imagine that same sunny day, free from any, fear or risk, right? Or contamination of any sort, free from the yellow tape. And in my mind's eye, I hopped up there and I did my 20 pull-ups. Did a few extra, did my 25, did 30 pull-ups. Got a great rush, hopped down, and kept it moving, as though that had actually just happened, minus that detail of the experience. and what I found from that was I received pretty much the same degree of satisfaction as though I had actually done that in the physical realm. And I know that might sound kind of spaced out, but it was one of those things where, because I'd been exposed to this information, that gave me perspective on how we can view limitations on our situations, I had to kind of stop and put myself in check. Like, hey, people right now are freaking out because, they're at home, and granted, there's a whole lot more depth to that. But, taking it in this instance and referencing the fact that, like, man, there's been people throughout history that have had, you want to use the word lockdown, I'm talking like super lockdown, prisoner of war, and torture and everything else, batter and bruise and physical, mental. So his struggles to get to a point where he could locate that key, to not even, to not lose hope, to keep faith in his future, and his focus on his facts was leaned to that side, to the faith side, which would lead to those situations of empowerment where he could change his thought process and create, situations of anticipation as to how he was going to get through something. And that became, power when it got to the point of reaching his hands, just from the thought process. So that's something I wanted to share here is, those are a couple of resources that might be useful in helping you unlock the keys to the freedom in your world, right? Because a lot of people have experienced disruption. What will help you find freedom? What is it in your world? What can you think of? What are the places of paradise and pleasure that you can go and visit in your mind right now by just taking that pause, that time out, right? No different than they say, take just a few minutes to meditate, to stop and pause, to pause the world, so to speak. How can you use those instances and the power of your mind together to really start to create some of the freedom that you may feel has been taken away? How can you get back some of your freedoms just through the use and power of the mind in a healthy and peaceful way, right? And I think that just starts the process, giving effort, giving time into doing that. And what that enables us to do from a standpoint of just generate more positive energy within us and keep that moving through us. You take care of your mind, your body, your spirit. You've got got the three core. You got the three elements to a strong core. No sit-ups involved, right? So I wanted to put that out there and just kind of share something that might be relatable to any of you that are listening to this. If you've had disruptions in your day-to-day over a 30-day window, grab either The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen R. Covey, or pick up Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. I think those will give us a little bit of perspective on how we can find keys to freedom, because what I would briefly mention on the other side of that coin are locks. What are some of the things that lock us down, right? It's like the things that we continually think about, those become the habits that create the lifestyle, right? So if you're not tuned into the right frequency, it's not going to be in your best interest. And so the memories that we are creating right now from our experience that's what have to be used to, those memories we create become tangible. So as they crystallize into reality at a deeper rooted level, is that crystallization process forming a key, or is it forming a lock? And that would be the arena where you'd want to channel those thoughts. And then you start to say, okay, what are the things I can do to make my mind, body, and spirit stronger on a daily basis? So, you've got that you're fortified with vitamins and minerals, right? To take on anything the world can throw at you, at least conceptually. So as it pertains to the mind, as it pertains to being positive in your outlooks and having certain freedoms, even though some of those have in some way, shape, or form been removed, what are the ways that you can take back charge of your life? And that starts in your mind. And sometimes you may have to use the power of visualization and use the power of a childlike imagination to help create those keys, right? Because the memories we can create right now can be like locks. They can be chains on the brain. And those chains on the brain can drive you insane if you remain shackled long enough, right? I know some of you feel it. So looking at this to be words of encouragement, good sources of good information that can help you get a more positive outlook. And as I've probably said for almost a full couple of decades now, positive outlook, positive outcome. If you can believe in that, that starts to really channel the right energy that can be used to fuel your fire and your passion to empower your mind, get a stronger body, get a stronger spirit, right? Just start at the base. Start at the basics, right? There's a quote I'll leave you with, and I think I've got the credit right. Quote by Leo Tolstoy. Pretty sure that's the person who deserves credit. And it says, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. I'll say it again. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. And if that doesn't click, to spin it a different way, it's as simple as this. We want the world to change. We must start right here at home. The one thing we control. We may not have control over the world, but we have control over ourselves. And that's what starts to create the change that we want to see in the world. So, want to see more positive things outside? We can look within to create more positive energy and then send that out to the world and send love, be encouragement of positivity. So that's where I'm coming from today, and hopefully you found some value in this as we kick off the last week of April 2020, and can't wait to catch you on a future episode. Thanks for joining me.